Welcome to Brainstorms and our first inaugural podcast. I'm Chrisanne Gordon, and I am both a physician who takes care of people with traumatic brain injury and a brain injury survivor myself. And let me tell you, I was a terrible patient. One thing was I learned a lot about primarily the holistic ways to bring yourself out of a brain injury with the help of those around you. And so today, with that idea in mind, we are very blessed to have Chief Joseph Pisano, Navy chief, retired, and a famous artist, who is bringing one of those community ideas together, how to bring together the community of veterans, military members, and civilians who may know a little bit about a brain injury, but who may know a lot about how to bring somebody out. And we hope to be introducing you to all of those people in the future. But right now, we're about to talk with Chief Joe Pisano from San Diego. So, Chief Joe Pisano.
Yes. Navy
Chief, artist extraordinaire, thank you so much for jumping on an airship and coming to visit us from San Diego here at wonderful Sycamore Studios in Plain City. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me here. This is a great morning to do a podcast.
It certainly is. And this is our first, so you are a part of the premiere. We're really happy about that.
Okay.
And I'd like to just jump right in. And Chief, could you just tell our audience, and many of our veterans know you already from various events we've had over the last couple of years, but just a little bit about yourself and how you got interested in art and what it can do for your fellow military members as well as veterans.
Okay, so I am a Navy chief, recently retired out of a 24-year career. And I actually started doing artwork, a lot sooner, but just recently I've kind of understood the value of art therapy.
I gotcha. Okay.
And through my own struggles, I've used art therapy to help me get through my days and my weeks and months. And so I started inviting veterans to be a part of it. They contribute by installing screws as my premier medium.
Okay.
To just any aspect of the creation.
Okay. So you had kind of have hardware. I mean, we're not talking you don't have watercolor art or anything like that. Tell our audience who may not know you just what you mean by drywall screws and how many of them per project.
Right. So I had wanted to draw the American flag as one of my pieces for my portfolio, and discovered a gentleman named Andrew Myers working with screws, and I thought that would be a great marriage between his technique and medium and my image. So in 2018, I created my first screw art, and it was very successful, and it actually had a very direct course of action, I guess you could say.
Kind of effect on people. I mean, people are affected when they take a look at your art because it is 3D and it is massive, right?
Right, and part of the idea is that it was created for the visually impaired. So unlike other artwork, you can't touch it. Mine is, you're allowed to touch it and feel it, and that's part of the experience. The other part of the experience with the flag in itself is that I've created a frame that goes around it.
Okay.
And that frame allowed my veterans to sign it as kind of like a contribution to their service. Okay. So in a command, when a service member leaves or change a command, they're given usually a command photo, and then it's matted and allows the members of that command to sign it as it's going away.
Okay.
So
I didn't know that, and I bet there's some people in our audience don't know that either. So
right. So that was kind of a premise to the idea of the Stand Together flag that allows veterans from all branches of service and all eras, war eras, that could be a part of it.
Okay. Now, for the audience that doesn't know your background, could you explain just a little bit about why the American flag is so important to you? Because you have a very interesting history, right?
Right. So I was born in the Philippines, abandoned when I was a month, and I was adopted by an American family who was stationed in the Philippines.
Okay.
And
they're a Navy family.
Navy family, correct. And so the American flag represents literally my origin, my beginning. And for a lot of immigrants, it's the same. We kind of strive for that way of life, and the American flag, one, represents that, but all the veterans are the ones that keep it that way.
Keep it. And so you came up with the idea of stand together. Tell us just a little bit more about what you mean. Like we all stand together under the flag, or what were you thinking, Chief?
So when I was working with it, the working title is Old Glory.
Oh, okay.
And at one point, I reached out to a fellow Marine. I said, "Hey, I'm working on this art project. Can you help me with the title?" And going back and forth, and he said, "Well, we actually just stand together when it comes to saluting." And I said, "That's brilliant." And that's what we do. Whenever we see a flag, we being military,
Okay.
we stand and we salute it. And the idea was that regardless of branch of service, because I know that we jab with amongst us, right?
Right.
But when it really comes real, we all are together.
That's really an amazing thing. And so from this stand together concept, you had the flag you began in San Diego, California, right? So
Correct.
tell me just a little bit about the history of that flag, and then we'll tell our audience about what you're doing to jump from that point.
Sure. So again, 2018, I create this flag. I started with one frame.
Okay.
About 100 veteran signatures, including 2 MWDs, which is the military working dog.
Okay.
And currently, it has 4 frames now and almost 1,000 veteran signatures. And
Wow.
it's traveled all over San Diego County
Okay.
and lower parts of California.
Okay, so you have this flag for a visual for our audience here. Yeah, so we have the flag and then like a white frame around it where people are signing, and they sign. You have a very specific amount of information that either the veteran or a veteran's family member may
Correct.
sign. Could you explain that just a little
Sure.
bit?
So in terms of the signature,
Okay.
it's name and rank, the time that the individual was in, or the era. So
Okay.
if they don't really remember quite the dates and the years, then they can put Vietnam era veteran or Vietnam veteran or Korean War veteran.
Okay.
So once they do that, then it's the branch of service. In case someone doesn't know a corporal, what origin that branch of service is, or a chief,
Right,
So
right.
then you have that, and then you have they sign it.
Right.
Now, if it's a family member signing for a veteran, they put all that verbiage, but at the end, they sign their name, and it's on
that
behalf
is
of their
amazing.
loved one.
And it's kind of like a living memorial, right?
Oh, absolutely.
To the person. And so if I could just ask you a little bit about what you noticed with a sense of community when you have veterans come in and sign. And then we're going to talk a little bit about why this is so important and then explain what we're doing in Ohio. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, so when you have people come sign, what sort of things have you noticed? Because I've been with you with several of these signings. I'm with Resurrecting Lives Foundation. We take care of our vets from the global war on terror, Iran and Afghanistan, who are struggling with traumatic brain injury. And we know there's 750,000 to 800,000 of them across the country, about 25,000 here in Ohio. And we're trying to give them this sense of belonging, get them out of their isolation and sense of honor as a means to prevent depression, despair, isolation, and the ultimate consequence of traumatic brain injury, which they are struggling with, would be suicide. So what have you noticed in your San Diego office, and then a little bit about what we've noticed? We'll talk about what we're doing in Ohio.
Okay. So the biggest thing that I've noticed with the flag and in all the different venues that it goes to, it draws the audience to it. Okay. And then once they do, people actually want to be a part of it. They see the signatures and they like, well, can I sign it? So for my veterans, it's a yes. And then a lot of times they're very reclused in their, approach.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they'll see a name next to them or within the frame and say, oh, I served on that ship, or I served, or, a fellow Marine. So Marines are very close-knit, of course, brotherhood, sisterhood. And so when they see a fellow Marine signing it, and it's, okay, then I can be a part of this flag as well. So just the draw into camaraderie.
Yes.
And that's our biggest, persona for the military is our camaraderie.
Right. And that's missing. I mean, that's missing in a lot of places when a person deploys from the military, goes back to their hometown. So it's like this happens a lot in Ohio. And they've been gone for a year or 2 years or so. They've been in what you guys call the sandbox or over in the Mideast. It's going back in time for centuries and what they're facing. They come back. It's hard to just plot back into
it is.
The 21st century. So you notice that they can talk a little bit about those experiences.
Yes.
And tell me just a little bit about what you notice about community members when they see this kind of ceremony.
So when I have community civilians, approach the flag and they want to sign it as well, and then I'll ask them, "Are you a veteran?" And then they get really disappointed when they say no, they're not, either by choice or by they couldn't join. And then all of a sudden they say, "Well, my uncle, my dad, someone in their family was a veteran," and so I will at that point make the decision, say, "On behalf of your father, for instance, will you sign?" And they get very teary-eyed, very emotional at that point. And then all of a sudden, the most beautiful thing happens, and they pick up their phone and they start dialing their family and go, "Hey, can you tell me about so-and-so?" And it rekindles the level of patriotism that I have never seen in any other type of venue.
And we need that now. I mean, we've been a country that's been divided. As a matter of fact, I think it was when I called you and said, okay, I've seen your Stand Together flag in California. We need one in Ohio. It was because of the kind of divisiveness that has happened in our country. And I think a lot of it is, media, social media, that sort of thing, because I think that the basic average American, and by average American, I mean, we are all very different, but we are all together under the flag.
Yes.
And I think that's what we need to remember. Let's not talk about how divided we are. Let's talk about how united we are. And,
Absolutely.
Under the United States flag. So I called you up and I said, okay, we want a flag like that in Ohio. We want the Resurrecting Lives Foundation. We're going to collect funds and we want to commission a flag and bring it to Ohio. And then you did that, right?
Yes. So the first and foremost, I had a vision in 2018 once I created this flag, once I saw the response.
So that's a long time ago.
That was a long time.
6 years ago.
Right.
Okay.
And I literally said to myself, this will be great around the nation.
Oh.
And it wasn't until I met you and Resurrecting Lives Foundation that actually made that dream come true.
Oh, wow. That was amazing. And we pulled in our little Greene County Commissioner, Rick Perales, who, was an Ohio representative and actually helped our foundation get started because he realized, we are narrow and deep. We work with veterans with traumatic brain injury to bring them to safety, knowing that the consequences of that traumatic brain injury are, substance abuse, unemployment, homelessness, and the final consequence being suicide. So he was the person who coined the phrase veterans standing together across America,
Yes.
or what you're calling VSTAA, right? VSTAA, right?
Yes, correct. And it's very fitting. And it is kind of to remind even our service members that we're still in this fight, regardless,
You only need to look at the news. Our military is all over the place trying to keep order where there's chaos, right?
Correct. And the biggest thing that I think the takeaway is that the biggest struggle and the chaos is within ourselves.
Oh, and you mentioned you had your own issues, right? So you... interior and exterior kind of understand depression
Absolutely.
and isolation. And in my book that I wrote about my recovery from brain injury, and I was not a courageous person. I was a klutz, literally, in God's irony, hit my head against a brick wall. You can't be more metaphorical than that, right? And I had, for the first time in my life, because I'm a very upbeat person, a depression that was so deep that I was struggling myself for several months. And I think it was a good thing because it allowed me to get to that place and then say, how do I get out of it? And one thing I realized is you don't get out of that yourself, right? You need somebody to help you. And I believe these events also help with that. And explain just a little bit how you've noticed people who were very desperate, in great amount of despair, who actually come away from an event like this where the community is around them and employers are talking to them and healthcare providers are talking to them and educators are giving them, here's some roads, pathways to a future. What have you noticed?
So,
some of them we've had together.
Right. No, and I think the biggest key to our success with Vista is the fact that both of us have experienced something that we've had to come out of. And so we can relate to the veterans that are struggling and allow them to be themselves, and yet know that by being themselves, we recognize the signs.
You know, it's really interesting because when I started working with our young veterans, I was actually doing traumatic brain injury screening at the local VA here, the Chalmers P. Wiley VA. And the first thing is, like, they noticed that I genuinely admire them. Like, I wouldn't have survived the plane trip over, let alone anything else. And I think when they come back, that's what the communities really need to understand. They are survivors. You know, their heads have been blasted. They've seen horrific things. You know, maybe they need a reintroduction into what it's like in our very superficial, you know, self-absorbed society, or maybe we need to maybe join some of their world, you know, and become a lot more giving to others and honor them for this. And what do you notice when the community really gets together and honors these veterans who have come together to sign your flag?
So one of the things that the community seems to partake in is the idea that they say thank you to our service members.
Right.
And this allows them to go one step further and actually
Good point.
kind of show that the words actually mean something. So whether it's helping create a flag, you know, and delivering it to Hawaii, for instance. I mean, I had over 60 individuals partake in creating the flag, and their level of patriotism and honor was much greater, you know, when they say thank you.
Yeah.
So that's part of the idea with these flags, is that the community can come together, help create it, and present it to the veterans.
Right.
And to say thank you is one thing, but there is a tangible side of it that
Action. We need action. Right.
That our veterans okay, we've heard the thank you for your support kind of thing, but there's more to it. And unfortunately, this is where it gets difficult to talk about, because, you know, you can say thank you, but what do you really mean? What is your intent behind it? So it can be either empty words, or, you know, you can have something more tangible with it.
Right. And I think, you know, this is March. This is National Brain Injury Awareness Month they talk about. But we at Resurrecting Lives Foundation last year decided to change it. It's National Brain Injury Action. It's an action month, which is why we're having this podcast for the first time here in March. I think that some of these actions are very important. When we talk about suicide statistics, I mean, everybody's noticing the young people, you know, are having issues and what's going on. But in our military, they keep it fairly quiet in our military members and our veterans, because they're not out, you know, on social media projecting this. So if we bring it to the audience's attention that there are nearly 5 times more veterans who have taken their lives here at home from the global war and terror than died in combat. 7,100 of our brave souls lost their lives in combat, and nearly 34,000 now have lost their lives since they came back. And it's still increasing. And that's on us. I think that's on the civilian world. We're what, like 99.5% of the population now compared to our military. And we need to let our military numbers... We don't last. We don't live here under these freedoms without them, without you, without people like you willing to serve. So I think that we really needed to get to those particular areas where suicide was a little bit more prevalent. So for instance, in Hawaii, you mentioned Hawaii. Hawaii, 25% of the people in Hawaii serve. And they're also one of our kind of diversity populations of yourself, you know, from Southeastern Asia, Asian Pacific.
Southern Pacific, yeah.
Asian
Pacific Islanders, yes.
Yeah. And what did you notice there when you went to Hawaii? I mean, that reception you had was absolutely amazing, wasn't it?
Right. So right now we have a flag in San Diego representing California. We have a flag in Ohio representing Ohio. We have now a flag in Hawaii. And the idea is to, you know, reach every state. So if we have an ideal way to present the flag to the community, to the veterans, I would have to say Hawaii meets that mark. And it was more of the embracement. They took the flag as more of not just some art piece, but something that they would cherish. One, respect it like the flag that's flying on the flagpole, and then realize that they are one the keepers of the flag, and they have a responsibility not just to the community but to the veterans that served,
Absolutely.
and allowed them to experience, because my artwork actually is an experience.
Right, for
and
sure.
so Hawaii really embraced it in such a manner that I'm hoping that that'll translate to all the other venues that we have.
Right. And we're very blessed here in Ohio because we've had AMVETS has been very helpful to us. AMVETS Post 26 in particular in Mansfield. And the commander of the Sons of AMVETS, Robert White, is the person that's going to be leading us when we go through Ohio. He also put us in touch with the commander of the Hawaiian Islands,
Yes.
Donovan Lazarus. And I remember talking to him on the phone and saying, oh, a man named Lazarus has to respect the Resurrecting Lives Foundation.
Absolutely.
This is meant to be. And that was an amazing ceremony. And then our foundation, thanks to our great donors, is going to be presenting flags to two other indigenous diverse populations. Number one, in August, it'll be Alaska, where we have U.S. Air Force retiree Patrick Romeo is going to be getting on a motorcycle in Miami and riding the motorcycle to Homer, Alaska, in awareness and getting donations for suicide prevention. And then we will be presenting a flag to Alaska, which is the number one state in our nation for suicides, both within the military and within our veterans. And about 25% of the Alaskan population as well has served in the military. So that's really huge, I think. We're making a statement for, what about the people that we forget? They're silently suffering until it's too late. We want you to be more vocal when you suffer. Reach out, let us see what we can do to help you. And it's so funny because my veterans will call me and say, oh, Doc, really? I said, every single one of you who calls me gives me much more than I ever give you. You give me an insight into what's going on so that the next, your battle buddy who calls next, I'll have a lot more insight than I did. So we're doing the Alaska flag, and then you helped put us in touch with Navajo Nation, which my brother served in the public health service, was on the Navajo Nation, and you have a friend, a Marine, right, from Navajo Nation that's going to set that up. I just want to let our audience know, not to ramble on, but 86% of the Navajo Nation serves in our military.
Right.
80% of them are Marines. So tell us a little bit about how you and Marcus Chischili got together and what we're going to be doing in Navajo Nation as well.
So Marcus actually signed the flag. I met him through Honor Bowl. It's a football tournament in which they have high schools play, and the premise of it is to honor our veterans and raise awareness. So I was able to meet with him, and it turns out that he's a Navajo veteran, and he bought into the idea of saving lives through art. And so when we approached him with doing a piece for Arizona and the Navajo or the Native American population, it was a no-brainer for him. Like, I want to be a part of it, and he could reach out. He's our connector there, which is another great aspect to the whole art piece and Resurrecting Lives Foundation, is the connections that we get along the way, whether it be divine or just we direct it. But a lot of our connections become accidents that all of a sudden, like, this is meant to be. And kind of like with our connection, I mean, my vision wouldn't not be without Resurrecting Lives noticing the value of what I do and say, okay, I'm going to take a chance and put this forward and help reach the country.
Right. Well, we have a very fearless board. They really are fearless. And, several people have served. Paul Carlson, our secretary, was in Annapolis and has a long family Navy history, which is why he was particularly, attracted to a Navy chief leading this to us. And then, like our vice chair, Skylar Burgess, is a retired colonel in the U.S. Air Force. So Jody, our treasurer, her husband, right now is serving overseas in our our Ohio National Guard. So we are, military friendly and military deep as well. So I do believe that your vision is, right, to get a flag in every state so that every state has this connection within the state and then connecting the states together. Would that be a correct assumption?
It is. And the biggest thing, though, and Resurrecting Lives helped get the flags to Hawaii and soon Alaska. But, my pocket's only so deep. So the idea of
so
getting
it's ours, by the way.
No,
they're about the same depth.
Right. And the funny thing is, and not a funny way, but to get the flags out to all the different states, we need, our community, our nation to recognize that this is a very valuable campaign.
It is a campaign. That's a good way of calling it, right?
And literally jump on board. And there's multiple ways that, people can be a part of it. And I know you'll touch on that, but I'm willing to do it until my hands literally drop off. But it's an important campaign, and that's why I want to stick with it and make sure that it does reach all 50 states.
Right. And the one thing that we both have noticed, and everyone who's been to, is how well it resonates. I mean, I truly believe that our nation is right now hungry for something to bring us together. We've been told too long how far apart we are, and we're really not that far apart. And I've noticed that, the veterans that I've talked to have been from 29 states. They're all races, creeds, colors of the skin, genders. Seriously, it is the most diverse population we have in the United States. And we are only existing because of them. So I think that this is a great way to kind of bring the nation back to our roots, right? That is our roots. Stand together under the flag, Pledge of Allegiance, and all help each other out. We need that more than ever right now. Don't you agree?
I agree. And, we talk about freedom of speech, for instance,
right?
And you talk about the person that can yell at the top of their lungs and saying whatever they want to say. And it's not that person that we're thanking for that freedom of speech. We're thanking the soldier or the service member, the veteran that allowed that freedom of that individual to speak at the top of their lungs.
Right. And I was going to say, your flags, even though they're made out of screws, hardware, these are hardware, have movement to them. All of the flags that you present have waves in them. And there was a very interesting thing that was stated by the martial arts leader there in Hawaii, it's Mr. Di Valentino, about what keeps the flags waving. And was
you probably know it better, but it's the breath of our veterans, our fallen, that keeps the flag flying.
Right. And I think that's a great way to think about it. For people who want to get involved with us, we have two websites now that we're maintaining. The first one is our resurrectinglives.org. And I'm sorry, because both of them are very long names. Resurrectinglives.org, where you can donate either financially or send us ideas at info@resurrectinglives.org or volunteer for any of the events. Right now, we have a scheduled event, the Blessing of the Bikes in Dayton, Ohio. And this is again on our website. And then yesterday, we were just so blessed to be able to meet with El Presidente, the president of the Columbus Clippers, Mr. Ken Schnocky. And he was able to negotiate an evening at the Veterans an evening at the Clipper Stadium it was both first responders and veterans every Wednesday are honored. And then we are going to get our special stand together on Wednesday, May 29th, right after Memorial Day, which is amazing. Fitting. So if anybody wants to volunteer for that, that'd be helpful too. And then the second, more complex website is veteransstandingtogetheracrossamerica.org, where the same information and ability to both donate and to become volunteers and to give us suggestions. If you would like to bring the flag to your community, give us some information about that as well. And then nationally as well, we have the Veterans Standing Together can do that too.
Absolutely, definitely. Again, and these websites are very live, very fluid. So, we'll give updates on, events and contributions, so that if you look on the website and you don't see everything, it's coming. It's forthcoming. So we have a lot of events already, planned, but it's just a matter of getting them out there, from my understanding. So
right. And Chief, you actually maintain both your Facebook, Pisano Artistry, and our Facebook, Resurrecting Live. So I don't do Facebook very well. So those are other places where people I know want to keep up. Okay. All righty. So if you're a veteran out there right now, I mean, and honestly, this podcast is for you. I mean, this is for our veterans and their families, particularly caregivers of veterans who may have struggles with traumatic brain injury. We want you to get involved in this whole campaign, as you go, which is honor and healing and getting together and getting that strength of being part of a unit again, because I think that's what gets so many veterans into that despair and isolation, because you're a unit when you're fighting, and for so long you're a unit where your battle buddy, you can rely on them for anything, and then you come back to a community that may not even know that you served, and you don't have that backup. So, we can give that as well, right?
Absolutely. And part of the experience, so it can be a long deployment, or it can literally be, just a couple of weeks in a very bad situation that, your battle buddy, like you said, is the one that helped you come back home. And unfortunately, in doing so, a lot of that veteran is still in the battlefield.
Yeah,
and exactly. So when we bring them back home, the struggle definitely begins, not just with the member itself, but the family that has to figure out what the heck's wrong with my loved one. I mean, they're not the same.
Right, exactly. Oh, nor could they be.
Yeah.
Nor could they be. I really, I can't say enough wonderful things about our veterans and their families, and you know that. And although my father served in the military, he was very quiet about it and did not see combat. So we weren't really a military family. But I want this to be their podcast. This is their podcast.
Okay.
Our veterans who are struggling, veterans who can't seem to get connections in the communities. We really want this podcast to be bringing people together. For instance, like I said, we're called brainstorms. We're brainstorms because of two reasons. We're brainstorms because of that storm that goes on within your brain after you've had it injured, and you know it, and I know it. Yours by more honorary means than myself, and all of our veterans by honor and serving our country. But it's also a chance for us to brainstorm, to use the verb part of it, to be thinking of how we can get it together. And definitely, don't you think that members in your community who have had this are wanting to talk? They want to be heard about this, and they have so much to teach us. How do you see that from, your military experience as well?
It's all about platform.
Okay.
And once we present a platform, via the Stand Together flag, allowing people to approach it, and all of a sudden they're able to talk. Mm-hmm. I've had veterans that have confessed that they've never talked about a situation, and all of a sudden they do. I've had families that literally will talk about their veteran, like, we weren't supposed to talk about it because, that was taboo.
Right.
And I think having that type of a platform is necessary for the healing process.
Right. We need a dialogue.
Exactly.
And we, the civilian world, I will tell you, has much more to learn from them than they have to learn from us. And that's the truth. And that's kind of a paradigm shift from what we're currently kind of thinking, the veteran comes back, blah, blah. No, listen to him.
Right.
Listen to her. Listen to their families.
Right.
Listen to their struggles, because these are American struggles.
Right. And if you do that, then it helps us help the veterans, because part of the puzzle is you got to know what's happening with the family part of it, because if not, and you only focus on the veteran, then you're not getting the whole
Right,
treatment.
absolutely. And so much of what's going on is the veteran trying to protect the family,
yes.
And I think that's the crux of it all, which is very admirable as well. But we're never going to solve these issues unless we talk about them together.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, so definitely, the platform is where we invite.
Exactly. Hence the name Brainstorms. That's what we're here to do.
We're brainstorming right now.
Exactly.
Very good.
Okay, thank you so much, Chief Pisano. I think that was a great way to get started with our inaugural podcast of Brainstorms. We really want this podcast to be something for all of our military members, our veterans, their families, and to bring communities in as well. This is an American issue, and we are all Americans under the flag. And I think that to have your opinion as to how to bring this forward will be so helpful to us during the next few weeks and next several months. We want to be talking to members of the community who are helpful with employers, for instance. I mean, employers need to know what our veterans have struggled through and how well they have championed those struggles. We need to talk to educators and members of the community, because both the military members, our veterans, and the civilian world all have solutions to offer for every single problem that we have in the United States right now. And it's only by getting together that we can make change happen. I am all about change, and I want us to aim really high here in Ohio, where this broadcast is being set, because we actually do lead the nation in so many things. First in flight. Okay, let's be first in solving this particular issue. We want our military members to be strong. We want them to be strong when they come home and become veterans. So we want our communities to be stronger because of them. So thank you all for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you on the next Brainstorms.
If you are thinking about harming yourself or attempting suicide, tell someone who can help right away. Call 911 for emergency services. Go to the nearest hospital emergency room. Call or text 988 to connect with the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. This podcast is made possible thanks to a grant from the Overwatch Alliance, and it's produced by the Resurrecting Lives Foundation at the Sycamore Studio. Music is written, performed, and graciously provided by Tim Bakel. Remember, when you work toward brain injury recovery, it is best to journey with a friend and keep your gait steady and your spirit strong. Finally, always seek shelter from your storms.
From Baghdad to Basra, the Boston, the Bakersfield, the hottest battle I ever fought is raging inside of me. My brain has been battered, scrambled and rattled, and no one knows what's going on.